The phone camera was shaking slightly as Madison Chen whispered into it, her perfectly manicured finger pressed against her glossy lips in a shushing gesture. "Watch me absolutely destroy this boomer judge, guys. This is going to be the best content ever." She was sitting in Judge Judy's actual courtroom, live streaming to her 847,000 TikTok followers, completely unaware that she was documenting the beginning of her own social media execution. What happened in the next 12 minutes wouldn't just end her court case. It would obliterate her entire influencer empire, turn her loyal followers into her harshest critics, and transform her from internet celebrity into the most hated person on social media. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Madison didn't just lose her case and walk away embarrassed. What Judge Judy did to her was so legally devastating, so perfectly calculated, that it resulted in the permanent destruction of her TikTok account, the loss of over $300,000 in annual income, and a courtroom ban that became the most watched legal moment in internet history. Before we dive into how this clout-chasing influencer got completely annihilated by America's toughest judge, make sure you smash that like button if you're ready to see what happens when internet fame collides with real-world consequences. Hit subscribe because what Judge Judy uncovered in Madison's TikTok history will absolutely shock you. And drop a comment saying justice served if you think influencers need to face the same rules as everyone else. Trust me, you've never seen a takedown this brutal, this satisfying, or this permanent. Madison Chen had built her entire career on a simple but toxic formula. Find people having bad days, provoke them until they react, film their breakdown, and post it for millions of views. At 28 years old, she had perfected the art of turning human suffering into viral content. Her TikTok bio read "Professional Karen Hunter" with a little trophy emoji, and her content strategy was as calculated as it was cruel. She would walk into restaurants, retail stores, and service businesses with her phone ready and her attitude dialed up to maximum entitlement. Then she would create problems. Complicated orders with impossible modifications. Complaints about wait times that were completely reasonable. Aggressive confrontations over minor issues that normal people would just ignore. And when the exhausted service worker finally showed frustration or emotion, Madison would capture it all on camera, edit it to make herself look like the victim, and upload it with mocking captions and laughing emojis. Her followers ate it up. Every video of a crying cashier or frustrated manager would rack up millions of views. The comments would flood in with people calling the workers Karens, even though Madison was the one causing the chaos. She had somehow convinced nearly 1 million people that filming service workers without consent and deliberately provoking them for content was not just acceptable, but entertaining. And it was making her rich. Each viral video generated between $15,000 and $30,000 in ad revenue. Brand sponsorships paid her $50,000 or more. The TikTok Creator Fund sent her monthly checks. Madison had turned Karen hunting into a 6-figure business, and she was proud of it. She posted her earnings, showed off her designer purchases, and bragged about how she had figured out the algorithm. But what Madison called content creation, her victims called harassment. And there were a lot of victims. The video that finally brought Madison to Judge Judy's courtroom was her most viewed and most cruel. Jessica Morales was a 34-year-old restaurant manager working double shifts to support her 2 children after a difficult divorce. She was already exhausted when Madison walked into her restaurant with 3 friends, all of them holding phones like they were carrying weapons. Madison had ordered something intentionally complicated, with modifications that would take extra time, then immediately started complaining about how long it was taking. When Jessica politely explained that custom orders required a few extra minutes, Madison exploded. Not because she was actually upset, but because she needed the content. For 20 minutes, Madison berated Jessica in front of the entire restaurant. She called her incompetent, demanded to speak to corporate, threatened to have her fired, and made sure every second was captured on camera from multiple angles. Jessica tried to stay professional, but the stress of the confrontation combined with months of exhaustion triggered a panic attack. She couldn't breathe. Her hands were shaking. Tears started streaming down her face as she struggled to compose herself in front of her staff and customers. A normal person would have stopped. A decent person would have apologized. Madison zoomed in closer and kept filming. She posted the video that same night with the caption "When Karens can't handle being called out," followed by 3 crying laughing emojis. The video exploded. 4.2 million views. 890,000 likes. Thousands of comments mocking Jessica, calling her weak, saying she deserved to be fired. And she was. The restaurant's corporate office, terrified of the bad publicity and the mob of Madison's followers threatening to leave negative reviews, terminated Jessica's employment 3 days later. Jessica Morales had never imagined that going to work would result in her life being destroyed by a stranger with a smartphone. After the video went viral, everything fell apart with devastating speed. She lost her job, which meant she couldn't make rent. Her children saw their mother being mocked by millions of people online, with strangers leaving cruel comments calling her pathetic and saying she deserved everything she got. Jessica fell into a deep depression, unable to sleep, unable to stop refreshing the video to see the view count climbing higher and higher. Every view felt like another person witnessing her worst moment. Every comment felt like another knife in her back. She applied to dozens of jobs, but potential employers would search her name and find the video. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who had a panic attack on camera. Madison had turned Jessica's breakdown into entertainment, and Jessica had become unemployable because of it. The financial devastation was immediate and brutal. Without income, Jessica burned through her savings in weeks. She had to ask family for help with basic expenses. Her car got repossessed. She couldn't afford therapy even though she desperately needed it. Meanwhile, Madison was posting videos about her new designer handbag purchased with the money she made from Jessica's suffering. The cruelty wasn't accidental. It was Madison's entire business model. And Jessica wasn't her first victim. She wasn't even close. Madison had been perfecting her harassment techniques for over 2 years, leaving a trail of destroyed lives behind her perfectly curated Instagram aesthetic. When investigators later went through Madison's content history, they found a pattern that was as disturbing as it was deliberate. There was the grocery store cashier, a 19-year-old college student working her way through school. Madison had filmed her crying after Madison spent 15 minutes berating her over a coupon dispute. That video got 2.1 million views. The comment section turned into a harassment campaign, with Madison's followers finding the girl's social media and flooding it with abuse until she deleted everything. There was the coffee shop barista, a 23-year-old aspiring artist who made the mistake of getting Madison's order slightly wrong. Madison didn't just film the interaction. She doxed the coffee shop's location and encouraged her followers to leave 1-star reviews. That video got 3.7 million views, and the coffee shop lost so much business they had to lay off staff. There was the Uber driver, a 62-year-old immigrant trying to earn extra money for his medical bills. Madison had intentionally provoked an argument about the route he was taking, then filmed him getting frustrated when she refused to stop arguing. She posted it with the implication that he was dangerous. That video got 1.9 million views, and the driver was deactivated from the platform, losing his primary source of income. Each video followed the same formula. Madison would identify someone vulnerable. Someone working a minimum wage job. Someone who couldn't afford lawyers or PR teams. Someone who had no power to fight back. Then she would create a confrontation specifically designed to provoke an emotional reaction. She would film their distress from the most unflattering angles possible. She would edit the footage to remove context that showed her instigating the conflict. And she would post it with captions that painted her as the victim and her target as an unreasonable Karen. Her followers, many of them young people who didn't understand the real-world consequences of viral harassment, would dogpile on the victim. They would find their social media accounts. They would leave cruel comments. They would contact their employers demanding they be fired. Madison had weaponized her platform, turning 847,000 followers into an army of harassment that she could deploy with a single post. The money was substantial and it was addictive. Madison wasn't creating content because she believed in holding people accountable or calling out bad behavior. She was creating content because it was profitable. Each viral video meant tens of thousands of dollars. Brand deals with fashion companies and lifestyle products meant monthly payments that exceeded what most people earned in a year. She had turned cruelty into a career, and she was good at it. Her apartment was filled with PR packages from companies desperate to be associated with her engagement numbers. Her closet was stuffed with designer clothes purchased with harassment money. Her Instagram stories showed a life of luxury funded entirely by the suffering of working-class people who had the misfortune of crossing her path. But Madison had made a critical error in her calculation. She had assumed that her follower count made her untouchable. She had convinced herself that because her content was popular, it must be acceptable. She had interpreted the lack of consequences as permission to escalate. When Jessica Morales decided to sue her for intentional infliction of emotional distress, loss of income, violation of privacy rights, and defamation, Madison didn't take it seriously. She saw it as content. Another opportunity to film herself being the victim of someone trying to cancel her for no reason. She posted about the lawsuit on TikTok with the caption "Going to court tomorrow to school a boomer judge on internet culture, this is going to be epic content," followed by 3 fire emojis. That video got 2.3 million views and thousands of comments from her followers promising to support her and ratio anyone who disagreed. Madison Chen arrived at the courthouse like she was attending a red carpet premiere rather than facing a lawsuit for destroying someone's life. She had spent 2 hours that morning perfecting her appearance for what she called her court debut. Her blonde highlights were freshly done from an expensive salon visit. Her makeup was flawless, applied specifically to look good on camera with extra attention to contouring that would photograph well. She wore a designer outfit that walked the line between courtroom appropriate and Instagram worthy, something that would look professional enough for the judge but stylish enough to go viral on social media. Her leather portfolio bag, which should have contained legal documents and notes about her case, instead held a ring light, a backup phone for recording, and a portable charger to make sure she didn't miss a single moment of content. She wasn't alone. 3 of her friends had come along, all wearing matching Team Maddie t-shirts like this was a sporting event rather than a legal proceeding. They positioned themselves in the gallery with their phones ready, waiting to capture every moment. Madison had even arranged for what she called a documentary crew, which was really just a guy she knew who owned a nice camera and was willing to film in exchange for exposure on her platform. She was treating this entire lawsuit as a content opportunity, another chapter in her narrative of being targeted by people who just didn't understand internet culture. As she walked up the courthouse steps, she stopped every few feet to take selfies, posing with the building in the background and posting them to her Instagram story with captions like "Serving looks in court today" with a nail polish emoji, and "Judge Judy has no idea what's about to hit her" with a laughing emoji. Inside the courthouse, Madison's behavior didn't improve. She was loudly FaceTiming with someone in the hallway, her voice echoing off the marble walls as she described how boring and outdated everything looked. When a court officer politely asked her to lower her voice, she rolled her eyes dramatically and said, "This is literally a public building, I can talk as loud as I want." She pulled out her phone every 30 seconds to check her notifications, respond to comments on her posts, and film quick updates for her followers. As she entered the actual courtroom, she was actively live streaming to a private Instagram account, whispering commentary to her followers about how crazy it was that she had to be there just making content. A bailiff noticed and approached her, asking her to turn off her phone. Madison's response was immediate and entitled. It's called freedom of the press. Look it up." She made a show of putting the phone in her bag, but she didn't turn it off. She just positioned it so the camera was still recording, streaming everything from inside her designer purse. What Madison didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have anticipated, was that Judge Judy had been preparing for this case with the thoroughness of a military operation. For 2 weeks, Judge Judy's research team had been downloading and archiving every single video Madison had ever posted. They found 47 separate videos showing Madison harassing service workers. They documented the pattern of deliberately provoking confrontations. They tracked down and interviewed 15 of Madison's previous victims, people whose lives had been damaged or destroyed by her content. They subpoenaed Madison's financial records from TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, obtaining exact figures showing how much money she had made from each harassment video. They analyzed her direct messages and found conversations where Madison explicitly discussed targeting specific people for content. They even found messages where she told friends she was planning to make Jessica cry for a viral video. Most importantly, Judge Judy's team had contacted TikTok's legal department directly. They had presented the platform with evidence of systematic harassment and violations of community guidelines. They had documented how Madison's content encouraged coordinated harassment campaigns against private individuals. They had shown TikTok's legal team that Madison wasn't just creating controversial content, she was actively violating the terms of service that she had agreed to when she created her account. TikTok's lawyers were very interested in this case, not because they cared about justice, but because they were terrified of the legal liability. If Madison's harassment content was allowed to continue, it could open TikTok up to lawsuits from victims. The platform's legal department had been looking for a test case to demonstrate that they took harassment seriously, and Madison Chen had just volunteered herself. Judge Judy knew Madison's entire strategy before the girl even walked through the door. She had watched Madison's video announcing her intention to school a boomer judge. She had seen the comments from Madison's followers planning to flood social media with support. She had read Madison's direct messages where she described the lawsuit as free publicity and predicted she would gain followers from the controversy. Judge Judy had built a career on reading people, and she could see exactly what Madison was. A narcissist who had convinced herself that her follower count made her immune to consequences. A bully who had found a profitable way to torment vulnerable people. A predator who had weaponized social media to destroy lives for entertainment and profit. And Judge Judy was about to teach her a lesson that no amount of followers could protect her from. The moment Judge Judy entered the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted like air pressure dropping before a storm. Everyone stood as protocol demanded, everyone except Madison, who was still fiddling with her phone under the table until her lawyer frantically nudged her to stand up. Judge Judy took her seat with the calm, measured movements of someone who had presided over 20,000 cases and knew exactly how this one was going to end. She reviewed her notes for a moment, letting the silence build, then looked up with those sharp, penetrating eyes that had made criminals and liars squirm for decades. The opening statements began with Jessica's lawyer presenting the case with straightforward clarity. He showed the video of Madison harassing Jessica. He documented the panic attack. He presented evidence of Jessica's job loss and the financial devastation that followed. He showed the cruel comments from Madison's followers and the harassment campaign that had made Jessica's life unbearable. Throughout this presentation, Madison sat at the defendant's table with visible contempt on her face. She rolled her eyes when Jessica's lawyer described the emotional trauma. She sighed loudly when he mentioned the panic attack. She even smiled slightly when her viral video was played in court, like she was proud of her work. When it was Madison's turn to defend herself, she stood up with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for anything in her entire life. Your Honor, with all due respect, this is literally just Gen Z humor. Nobody actually got hurt. It's called content creation. Maybe if Jessica wasn't such a, she paused, clearly about to say something insulting before remembering where she was, maybe if she could handle customer feedback, none of this would have happened. Judge Judy's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Sit down, Ms. Chen. Madison sat, but the smirk never left her face. She thought she was winning. She thought her confident attitude was impressing the judge. She had no idea she was digging her own grave with every eye roll and every dismissive gesture. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on Madison with uncomfortable intensity. Ms. Chen, are you currently recording these proceedings? Madison's response came too quickly, too defensively. No, Your Honor. I'm not recording anything. Judge Judy didn't break eye contact. Bailiff, please check Ms. Chen's devices. Madison's face flashed with panic for just a second before she recovered her composure. This is literally a violation of my rights. You can't just search my stuff without permission. This is America. Judge Judy's response was ice cold. This is my courtroom, and you will follow my rules. Bailiff, proceed. The bailiff collected Madison's designer bag and began removing items. The primary phone, which was actively streaming to 847 people on a private Instagram Live. The backup phone hidden in a side pocket, recording video for what Madison called her documentary. The ring light, carefully wrapped in a silk scarf. Extra batteries and chargers. It was an entire mobile content creation studio disguised as courtroom materials. The revelation sent shocked murmurs through the gallery. Even Madison's friends in their Team Maddie shirts looked uncomfortable, suddenly realizing that maybe their influencer friend had gone too far this time. Judge Judy held up the streaming phone, the screen clearly showing the live feed and the hundreds of comments from Madison's followers. Ms. Chen, you are in contempt of court. All devices are confiscated immediately, and you are being fined $1,000 for attempting to illegally broadcast these proceedings. Madison shot out of her chair like she'd been electrified. What? That's insane. You can't do that. This is censorship. My followers have a right to know what's happening. This is literally going to get posted everywhere. You can't silence me. The outburst was spectacular and self-destructive. Judge Judy waited for Madison to finish her tantrum with the patience of someone who had seen this exact performance countless times before. Ms. Chen, you have just added another $500 to your contempt fine. Sit down and be quiet, or I will have you removed from this courtroom and rule in favor of the plaintiff by default. Madison sat down, but she couldn't stop herself. Under her breath, just loud enough for the courtroom microphones to pick up, she muttered, "Okay, boomer." The courtroom went dead silent. Even the stenographer stopped typing for a moment. Madison's own lawyer dropped his head into his hands. Her friends in the gallery suddenly became very interested in their shoes. Everyone in that room knew that Madison had just crossed a line that nobody crosses with Judge Judy. The judge's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went from stern to absolutely lethal. "Excuse me, Ms. Chen. Did you just call me a boomer in my courtroom?" Madison, apparently incapable of reading the room or recognizing danger, doubled down on her disrespect. "I mean, no offense, Your Honor, but you're like 80 years old. You don't understand how the internet works. This is literally my job. You're trying to cancel me for making content, which is honestly super problematic and kind of ageist if you think about it." She actually turned to look at her friends in the gallery, expecting support, expecting them to be filming this moment of her standing up to outdated authority. Instead, she saw three people who desperately wished they were anywhere else. Judge Judy let the silence stretch out, let Madison's words hang in the air like evidence of her own stupidity. Then, with deliberate calm, Judge Judy opened a thick folder that had been sitting on her bench. "Ms. Chen, you claim this is your job. Let's discuss your business model in detail, shall we?" What Judge Judy pulled from that folder wasn't just evidence. It was a complete autopsy of Madison Chen's entire career, every cruel video, every harassment campaign, every dollar she had earned from other people's suffering, all documented with the precision of a prosecutor building a murder case. She began by spreading printed spreadsheets across her bench, each one representing a different aspect of Madison's systematic harassment operation. "Ms. Chen, you've described your content creation as harmless entertainment and generational humor. Let me show you what I've discovered about your actual business practices." Judge Judy held up the first document, her voice taking on that tone of controlled fury that had made her legendary. "This is a complete archive of every video you've posted featuring service workers over the past 2 years. 47 videos total. In every single one, you deliberately provoked a confrontation, filmed someone's distress without their consent, and profited from their humiliation." Madison tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, those are public spaces. I have every right to film. I'm not doing anything illegal. It's called the First Amendment." Judge Judy didn't even acknowledge the interruption. She simply continued, holding up another document. "This is your earnings report, subpoenaed directly from TikTok's financial department. Video 1, showing a teenage cashier crying after you berated her for 10 minutes over a price dispute, earned you $18,000 in ad revenue. Video 2, showing an elderly Walmart greeter asking you to stop filming, earned you $22,000. Video 3, the one featuring Jessica Morales having a panic attack, earned you $31,000. Should I continue, or are you starting to understand what you actually do for a living?" Madison's face had gone pale. "Those records are supposed to be private. How did you even get those?" "That's my personal financial information." Judge Judy's smile was razor sharp. "Discovery, Ms. Chen. When you file a lawsuit or get sued, the court has the power to subpoena relevant financial records. Perhaps you should have consulted with an actual attorney instead of getting your legal advice from TikTok comment sections." But Judge Judy wasn't finished. Not even close. She pulled out another set of documents, these ones even more damaging. What made Madison's situation exponentially worse was what Judge Judy revealed next. "These are screenshots from your private messages, also obtained through legal discovery. Let me read a few of them for the court. Message to your friend Kayla, dated February 10th. Going to this restaurant tonight. Gonna make the manager cry for content LOL. The crying emoji really adds a nice touch, don't you think?" Madison's hands were shaking now, gripping the edge of the defendant's table. Judge Judy continued reading. Message to someone named Tyler, dated March 3rd. Found the perfect Karen target at Starbucks. She looks like she's having a bad day already. Time to make it worse and get that viral video. Money emoji, fire emoji, crying laughing emoji. Very eloquent, Ms. Chen. The courtroom was absolutely silent except for Judge Judy's voice, cold and precise as a scalpel. And my personal favorite, a message to your group chat dated the day after Jessica Morales lost her job. Just made 30K from that panic attack video. Best ROI ever. Who says bullying doesn't pay? 3 crying laughing emojis. Madison was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger and humiliation, tears of someone who was finally facing consequences and couldn't manipulate her way out. That's out of context, she sobbed. You don't understand. I was joking with my friends. Everyone talks like that in private. Judge Judy leaned forward, her voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone. Ms. Chen, you weren't joking. You were planning. You were strategizing. You built an entire career on deliberately targeting vulnerable people, provoking them until they broke, then monetizing their suffering. That's not content creation. That's systematic harassment for profit. And it ends today. But Judge Judy had saved her most devastating revelation for last. She picked up a final document, this one with the TikTok logo visible on the letterhead. I've been in communication with TikTok's legal department throughout this case. They've been very interested in your business practices, particularly how you've been violating their terms of service on a systematic basis. Harassment and bullying, 47 documented violations. Filming and posting content featuring individuals without consent in states where such consent is legally required. Coordinating harassment campaigns in your comment sections against your targets. Monetizing content that explicitly violates community guidelines. Madison's voice was a broken whisper. What does that mean? Judge Judy's response was delivered with the satisfaction of someone who had just executed a perfect strategic plan. It means your account is currently under review for permanent termination. TikTok has been waiting for the outcome of this case to make their final decision. And based on the evidence presented here today, I think we both know what that decision will be. The impact of those words hit Madison like a physical blow. Her entire body seemed to collapse inward. No, 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 no. That's my income. That's my career. You can't do this. 847,000 followers. Years of work. You're destroying my life over some videos. Judge Judy's response was swift and merciless. No, Ms. Chen. You destroyed Jessica Morales' life. You destroyed the lives of at least 15 other people that we know of. You built a career on cruelty and called it content. I'm simply ensuring that you face consequences for your actions. Now Judge Judy delivered her verdict, and it was comprehensive and devastating. Ms. Chen, I find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. You are ordered to pay Jessica Morales $75,000 in damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress, loss of income, and violation of privacy rights. You are ordered to delete all videos featuring individuals who did not provide explicit written consent to be filmed and posted. You are ordered to post a court-approved public apology that will remain pinned to any social media account you operate for a minimum of 1 year. You are permanently banned from filming in any commercial establishment without written permission from the property owner. Violation of any of these terms will result in an additional $50,000 penalty and possible jail time for contempt. Madison was sobbing uncontrollably now, her carefully applied makeup running down her face in dark streaks. This is insane. I'm going to appeal. My followers will support me. They'll help me fight this. You can't cancel me. Judge Judy picked up her gavel, ready to end this circus once and for all. Ms. Chen, your followers can't help you now. They can't pay your fines. They can't restore your account. They can't undo the damage you've caused. You gambled your entire career on the assumption that popularity equals immunity. You were wrong. Case dismissed. The gavel came down with the finality of a coffin closing. The aftermath was swift and absolutely brutal. Within 3 hours of the verdict, TikTok permanently banned Madison's account. 847,000 followers, gone. Years of content, deleted. Her primary source of income, eliminated. The reason given was severe and repeated violations of community guidelines related to harassment, bullying, and coordinated harm. Instagram followed within 6 hours. YouTube demonetized her channel by the end of the day. Twitter suspended her account for terms of service violations. Her sponsors, the fashion brands and lifestyle companies that had paid her thousands per post, dropped her immediately with public statements condemning harassment and bullying. FabFitFun tweeted, "We do not support harassment and have terminated our relationship with this creator." HelloFresh posted, "This behavior is unacceptable and does not align with our values." Fashion Nova simply deleted every post featuring her as if she had never existed. But the internet's response was perhaps the most devastating part of Madison's destruction. Her former followers turned on her with the same mob mentality they had once directed at her victims. The hashtags Maddie is over party and justice for Jessica trended worldwide. Her video calling Judge Judy a boomer was viewed 50 million times, but not as a triumph, as evidence of her entitlement and stupidity. Commentary channels made hour-long videos dissecting her downfall. True crime podcasts covered her case as an example of social media's dark side. She became a cautionary tale, a meme, a symbol of everything wrong with influencer culture. 6 months later, Madison Chen's life looked nothing like the glamorous existence she had built on harassment and cruelty. She tried to return to social media under different names, but was identified and banned within 24 hours every single time. She attempted to start a podcast called My Side of the Story, but it averaged 47 downloads per episode, mostly from people curious to see how delusional she remained. She was forced to get what she had always called a real job, ironically ending up working retail, the very industry she had terrorized for content. Jessica Morales used the $75,000 to pay off her debts, get therapy, and eventually found a new job with a company that supported her through the aftermath. She became an advocate for service worker protection laws, and her case inspired legislation in 3 states requiring consent for filming service workers and creating penalties for harassment disguised as content creation. Judge Judy's handling of the case became legendary, studied in law schools as an example of how courts can address modern forms of harassment. The case proved that follower counts mean nothing in the face of real consequences, that platforms will protect themselves over creators when legal pressure mounts, and that no amount of internet fame makes you untouchable when you've built your career on cruelty. Madison Chen learned the hardest possible lesson. In Judge Judy's courtroom and in life, accountability always catches up with you, and your followers can't save you from the consequences of your actions. If this story proved that actions have consequences no matter how many followers you have, smash that like button right now. Subscribe if you believe influencers should be held accountable for the real-world harm they cause. Comment below and tell me, do you think social media has made people too comfortable with cruelty? Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that clout isn't a shield against justice. Hit that notification bell because we're covering more cases where internet fame meets real-world accountability. And remember, your follower count means absolutely nothing in Judge Judy's courtroom, and that's exactly how it should be. The internet might forget, but the law never does, and consequences don't care about your engagement rate.